Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I like to discuss the double hit that we, the ordinary members of the population, are now going to be taking as a result of the Brexit deal not including any serious arrangements for financial services. The EU are in no hurry to grant us greater access to their markets, and the vultures are advising the government to make the situation worse by abolishing taxes on the riches that they are making. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So there was another announcement on the subject of access for UK-based financial services in the EU last week by the EU Commission's representative for this area, Mairead McGuinness. They said that Brussels would not be recreating the conditions of the single market for the UK because we had chosen to move out of it. And this is fair enough. You know, we've said for years that if we want access to a market, well, you have to follow that market's rules. The example was frequently given over the years of gym membership, isn't it? Boris Johnson's attitude to Brexit was to cancel his gym membership and then complain that he's no longer allowed to use the facilities. An analogy that should make perfect sense to most of us. But to entitled beasts of privilege like Johnson, who is used to enjoying all manner of freedoms without having to accept any responsibility, maybe it was a genuinely difficult concept to come to terms with. But of course, there's more to it than that. In the run-up to Brexit at the start of this year, assets and jobs had already been moving from London to the major financial centres around the EU. Since Brexit, the exodus has accelerated. The most recent reports have talked about hundreds of financial firms having moved some of their activities to the EU, with £1 trillion already gone. And it's not over yet. It's no longer a fear, but an expectation that even more will disappear in time. And when you read reports from the past year or so, you did often get the impression that some in the financial sector expected equivalence to be granted by the EU. They stuck by this belief that Boris Johnson, of course, would get a deal for them. How could he not? It's too important a sector. It's been quite clear that many companies did not anticipate the restrictions on access to the EU markets that they got. They just refused to believe that this could be possible. We are the largest financial hub in Europe. And yet, New York and Tokyo-based companies have better access to the European market than we do. This is simply not sustainable. Of course, it's going to lead to even more business moving to the EU. And this is another reason why the EU won't be granting further equivalence. And even that which has been granted temporarily could well be scrapped in a couple of years, you know, depending on how things go. EU cities are benefiting from this aspect of Brexit. That £1 trillion and rising money that is the UK's loss is the EU's gain. France, Ireland, Netherlands, Belgium, Germany, all benefiting from the extra business coming their way. Why on earth wouldn't they want that to continue? I also saw a report that one thing that is constraining the ability of even more jobs disappearing right now are simply the coronavirus restrictions on travel. As soon as Europe comes through the pandemic, the floodgates could well open up. There is now talk that the hit to financial services from Brexit is going to be worse than anticipated. Of course, that is worse than anticipated by the people who thought the EU would grant equivalence because we would get a deal with them. You know, to which you have to ask, why exactly did senior members of the financial industry ever think that the EU were going to let us keep any sizable access to their markets when, well, if they didn't, it would inevitably result in them gaining a greater share of their business? The EU works in the best interests of its members. We are no longer a member. I mean, I don't know how difficult a concept that should have been to grasp for those in the city. Perhaps they just weren't as sharp as I gave them credit for. Some, however, are not missing a trick. The Financial Times is now reporting on advice from a group called the Investment Association. They are telling the government that they need to abolish taxes on UK funds. I'll bet they do. They're arguing that it will help the UK champion environmentally friendly investment strategies. Absolute bollocks, of course. They just know that that's the buzzword of the day. Oh yeah, we're going to invest in new green technology. Oh, if you abolish taxes on all our riches, that'll help green technology. Yeah. How exactly? Oh, absolutely will. Absolutely will. It will mean that our tax revenues fall even further. The financial sector contributes the largest share of our tax receipts. that was already going down due to the flight of legitimate business from London. You know, you go and abolish or even reduce the level of taxation on what remains, or as I say, what remains of the legitimate business, because obviously there won't be tax paid on the vast quantities of money laundering that London is notorious for worldwide, and those tax receipts will shrink even further. No doubt they will try and bash the long discredited trickle-down theory. If you reduce taxation, then more business, and then more business means more jobs. No, this never works, does it? It never, ever has worked. You'll just make billionaires a little bit richer and the rest of us a lot poorer. One part went, I'll quote this, simplifying the tax regime could also provide a boost to UK-based fund administration jobs located outside London by removing the incentive for asset managers to use cheaper international centres. And there it is. There's the race to the bottom. Could provide a boost to jobs. They say could because they know it won't. It's just why in theory it might create a few jobs, so it could do. No, it won't. But plugging the outside London bit is designed to appeal to Boris Johnson's need to appeal to the new seats he won in 2019 outside the south of England. This relies upon him generating growth in jobs in the north of England and places like that. Tell him that it will generate those jobs there. Yeah, absolutely. Of course it won't. But let's say some jobs were created. Let us just say. Are these going to be the well-paid jobs to replace the well-paid jobs being lost in manufacturing in these former Red Wall seats? No, they said it themselves. Administration jobs that would represent cheaper labour than may be found abroad. Translated, let's hire some northern monkeys because they're going to work for next to nothing. They'll have to because they'll have hardly any industry left by the time Brexit has worked its magic. And the vulture capitalists are laughing all the way to what's left of our banks. And this won't fall on deaf ears. It's the sort of deregulation that Boris Johnson has had on his beady eyes on throughout the Brexit process. It's the reason why we have a very thin deal for the trade in goods, which is a small part of our economy, and why we have no deal at all for services, which is several times the size of our trade in goods. He didn't want a deal on services because he wants to deregulate the sector, something that would be impossible with a deal. There are a number of different groups in the shadows that all push for Brexit. And this is why there are lots of different reasons why it happened. There's no one reason because there were lots of different groups wanted it for all their own reasons. But the investment bankers are those who wanted us to leave the EU so that they could carry out dodgier financial affairs without scrutiny and pay less tax on their ill-gotten gains. Preferably none at all. And with a highly elite government of entitled Etonians and their toadies, they'll get it. Who could doubt it? Like I say, Johnson specifically left services out of the Brexit negotiations because he had no intention of maintaining any sort of international standards. I saw a report in the New York Times that the government is trying to find ways to boost London's reputation as a global finance centre. I mean to say, doesn't that just highlight how little thought has gone into Brexit? I mean, only once Brexit has happened are the government even trying to think of ways to manage it. So they don't have a way to manage it. They haven't thought about this in advance. That's what it's saying. They're now trying to think of some way. But it's also a more depressing concept than that in itself. You know, the timing aside, London has been one of the giants of financial services for years around the world. There was no need to boost our reputation before Brexit. It was immense. It's Brexit that has shot that reputation to pieces. And how exactly are we going to do this? The EU are shutting us off from the European market. Nothing we can do about that. Nothing at all. Where do we go? Is this going to be like the trade in goods? Oh, we'll just compensate by more trade elsewhere. Where? Asia? I think you'll find China and Japan have got massive financial centres of their own, and they're not going to be allowing the UK to gain market share there. North America? I think the United States would quite like New York to carry on managing the bulk of that business. Wherever there is money, there is an established financial hub for managing it. The only reason London has any chance at all is because it never had a serious rival in Europe. The £1 trillion of assets that has left the UK hasn't gone to a rival in Europe. It's been spread out to different centres around Europe. There was no one obvious location for it to go to. If there were, then potentially it could be curtains. But I am still to see anyone in the sector coming up with a plan that will boost the UK business elsewhere to compensate for the loss of European business that isn't just you know, deregulating the sector so that the billionaires can squeeze a bit more money from it, because that's the only thing that's coming out now. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.